And Gary said, hey, so I got your tape, and man, all the voices, like who's doing all the voices on the tape? And I said, well, that's me. That's me doing everything on there. And he said, so is that you doing the Sam Kinison? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you Sam Kinison, like, we knew Sam better than anybody, and we thought it was him, man. That's how fucking good it was. And I was like, well, I'd love to work with you guys someday. And he said, well, actually, we have an idea. So many, like, it's kind of a slurred speech, and there's that demon laugh, and then of course a primal scream. Ah!
Hello and welcome to Here's the Pitch on the ST Weekly channel. I'm your friend here, Brad, your YouTube friend, and thank you for joining me as always. Well, I know a lot of people come to this channel because I do a lot of interviews with people who have been on the Stern Show or who were part of the Stern Show, who go on the Stern Show. And obviously that's the first time I heard of you, or maybe not obviously, but it was the first I had heard of you. So I want to kind of get into that a little bit. Just tell me a little bit about just the first time you heard, hey, we want to have Craig in, and did you know it was an audition? What was that like? Jackie leaves, and now this chair's open, and they're not sure what they're going to do with it. What did you think of was happening? Did you think it was an audition, or was it just a come in, do your thing, and how did it go?
And I put together a tape of all these voices that I did, and I overnighted it to the Howard Stern Show, and I think I labeled the tape Satan, and then I put in a little note like, hey Gary, this tape will scare the shit out of you. The next day, someone at the radio station, a receptionist, said, hey, you have a phone call from Gary dell'Abate. He wants you to call him. And I was like, that's it. And I went out and got hammered for like a week. I just went out and got shit-faced and just celebrated like, oh, it's going to be great news. And then a week later, the receptionist said, hey, Gary dell'Abate called and said, can you please call when you have time? And I was like, oh, fuck. That's right. So I called him up, and Gary said, hey, so I got your tape, and man, all the voices, like who's doing all the voices on the tape? And I said, well, that's me. That's me doing everything on there. And he said, so is that you doing the Sam Kinison? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you Sam Kinison, like, we knew Sam better than anybody, and we thought it was him, man. That's how fucking good it was. And I was like, well, I'd love to work with you guys someday. And he said, well, actually, we have an idea. And I started doing some stuff on the Stern Show, and it was this really fucking, like, hardcore. Every time an asshole died, like someone we could all agree is an asshole, like Jeffrey Dahmer. When someone like Jeffrey Dahmer died, I would call in the next day as Sam Kinison calling live from the gates of hell with a dead guy. And it would just be, hey guys, it's Sam Kinison. I'm down here in hell, and I got Jeffrey Dahmer down here, and he's looking at my ass like it's a TiVo. Oh! And it was just dark. It was so fucking dark. And then over the years, I remember I would call in as different celebrities. No, actually, first I started writing, and I asked, because Jackie would write all my material. And Jackie's material coming through Sam's voice sounded like Jackie's jokes through Sam's voice. And I remember saying, like, hey, I feel like this isn't authentic to Sam. I feel like Sam would have a different approach to these thoughts and these ideas. And Gary said, well, send me something. We'll take a look at it, man. And I sent him a script. And they're like, oh, this is good. You know what? You should start writing for the show. And so I started writing my own scripts. And at that point, I'm thinking, fuck, I should probably go back to New York. And so there was a comedian that I worked with a lot out in Seattle who was living in New York named Mitch Hedberg. And I asked Mitch, like, hey, Mitch, would it be cool if I need to be out in New York? Is it okay if I stay with you for a little bit until I get on my feet? And he was like, hell yeah, man, you can stay as long as you want. And I moved in with Mitch, and I started writing for Howard. I started writing for Weekend Update. And then I just started going into some weird fucking directions because I felt so much love from Howard for what I was doing that I was like, hey, Dennis Miller has this Monday Night Football gig. Like, wouldn't it be funny to have Dennis Miller come on and talk about and just not make any sense at all? Because Dennis has such a vernacular that's so over our heads. You know, all of his jokes of the, man, this crowd's harder to get off than, you know, oh, fuck, what was that one? Martha Stewart on a bed of dirty sheets. I mean, for Christ's sake. Like, so I started writing character stuff for that, and then I started doing weird shit. Al Pacino had twins, and I said, hey, wouldn't it be funny if one of the babies was a regular on the show? And nobody seemed to understand it except for Howard. And Howard would do this thing, this regular segment where he'd go, Al Pacino just had twins, and we have one of the babies on the show. So you're Al Pacino's baby. What do you like to do for fun?
What do I like to do for fun? I like to pee. You like to pee? I love to pee. My mother, Beverly D'Angelo, whenever she changes my diapers, I give her a quick squirt right in the fucking face. Hoo-ah! And she likes it because she's a whore.
It was terrible. Everything was like really out there. And then all of a sudden, one day in March of 2001, I wake up and I'm hearing on the show that they're giving Jackie a hard time because every time Jackie's contract would come up, it would be a real drawn out thing. And they were having a tough time because Jackie's style of negotiation, from what they would say on the show, was he would just say, it's all what I want. I will not compromise. And Howard told him at the end of his last contract, he's like, if you do this again, we're not going to stick around. Like you have to find some middle ground. You can't do it all your own way. And then his contract was coming up, and Howard reminded him, dude, please work with the station. And I woke up one morning, I had 3 messages on my voicemail. The first message was, dude, Howard Stern is looking for new people. You got to call him up. Boop. Hey, dude, I don't know if you heard, man. Howard Stern says he's going to audition new comics because Jackie's off the show. Boop.
Hey, Craig, it's Gary dell'abate. Call me as soon as you get this. And I was like,
what the fuck? And then I called him up and I go, hey, Gary, what's going on? He goes,
hey, how are you?
and I was like, he's never asked me how I am. I'm doing great. I heard Jackie quit the show.
Yes, he did.
And I said, is that what this is about? And he said,
yes, it is.
and I was like, what do you want to do? And he said,
We just want you to come in for 2 days, just see what happens, just have some fucking fun.
and then I came in, and that's all I wanted, man. I wanted 2 days, just come in and have fun. And something happened in that first 2 days that was like, I didn't realize how large it was. All I ever want to do when I'm in a studio with somebody is I just want to make everyone in this room laugh. And you don't think about people listening. And in that show, I mean, I was getting text messages all the time from all over the country. And then I started getting offered acting roles, and then, got, just based on stuff I would say on the show. I got offered acting roles in Sex and the City, and later on King of Queens, and things just started happening from there. But the audition was supposed to be a 2-day audition. It turned into 2 days a week, every week for the next 10 months or so. And then by the time we got to that end of that run, I was in 2 days a week, and then they would bring in Florentine and Kimmel and Richard Jenny, Adam Carolla, Jeff Ross. Then they started bringing Artie in. Then Artie started doing 2 days a week. And then that middle day on Wednesday, they would start rotating. But it was just me and Artie doing 2 days a week every week. And then they finally gave the job to Artie, and then I started getting work. So it launched my career. That's a long fucking answer.
You gave the story. That is the full story. What was it like? I mean, when they call you and tell you you're not going to do this anymore, how was it devastating, or were you like, "Oh, great time"?
I was kind of exhausted because I didn't know until the end of Tuesday every week that I was coming back next Monday and Tuesday. So, And I was doing drugs back then too. So like, you know, it started to become a mind fuck of like, I don't know where this is going. It was supposed to be a 2-day audition, and it's going on all year long. And I didn't know where the light at the end of the tunnel was. So once I got word, hey, this is over, where we decided to go with Artie, it was like, all right, cool. And it's funny because I would see Artie sometimes at auditions, and I genuinely got the feeling that Artie carried some kind of guilt because of the way he would talk to me. He would always go, hey, I don't know if you heard, do you hear the show today? And I'd say, no. And apparently a caller called in and said, hey, Artie, I love you. And he'd go, oh, thanks, buddy. And they'd go, yeah, but Craig Gass is better. And did you hear that? And I was like, no, I didn't. That's funny. And it really was funny to me that he would point that out to me, like, hey, man, fans love you. And he was always incredibly sweet to me, you know, so.
But not depressing at all to think that could have been you for the next 10 years. I mean, does that, or is it, that's the way show business is, right? I mean,
no, I mean, there's nothing depressing. I mean, I've been paying my bills and my mom's bills for 20 years. Like there's no downside to, like, if you say there's a downside, it's like, well, you could have had this much more money, but I never finished high school, and I went to high school for a long time, you know, and I still don't have my diploma. And so everything turned out so much better than I expected. And I continue to get work, and I'm starting to do stuff with Howard again. And which just started like in October. It started with Eddie Van Halen's passing. I put Howard and Eddie together when I was living at Eddie's house. So Howard had me on to just say, man, you know, when Eddie passed, you're the first person I thought of. And then we just talked, and it was such a nice conversation. We hadn't talked in I feel like 15 years, something like that. So that kind of opened the door, and then I wrote a thing for them, and that opened the door some more. And it was like, why don't we do some more fun stuff? So, you know, and I'm already, because of Howard, I used to call Howard once a year on March 15th and say, hey man, I just wanted to, 8 years ago on this day, 10 years ago on this day, 12 years ago on this day, you know, because I've been paying my mom's bills. I just want to say thank you once a year. And then one year, Howard goes on and goes, oh, by the way, Craig Gass, if you're out there, you got to stop fucking calling me. You call me all the fucking time. I literally called him once a year. And then Gary comes in the studio. Yeah, I told him to leave me alone. I don't know what's going on. The fucking guy, you know, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, he turned it into a bit. And it was like, all right, you know, fine. Like, you know, it's, you don't need to keep calling the guy every year to say thank you. But I'm just an appreciative person who I understood the humor in turning that into a bit. So
sounds like he likes the email thing from what I've heard on this show, that you can email him. He might, you know, send you something real quick, but don't call.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm already weird about calling famous people. I have a lot of people's phone numbers in my phone that I'll scroll through and I'll go, I'm not calling that guy. Like, I just always feel like I'm going to bother somebody, you know, but I understand. I totally understand. But he's done so much for me by putting me on that platform that I'm eternally grateful. So
you mentioned Artie, and Artie takes that spot, and he runs with it for a good 9 years, and it was hilarious radio. I always say there's this double era. Jackie era was awesome. That's how I kind of learned about the show. The Artie era made me a super fan. I mean, I just thought Artie was so great. Did you listen back then? Did you find Artie funny? And have you talked to Artie in a while? How is Artie? Everyone wants to know.
All the time. Oh, and dude, that is like, I went down this rabbit hole of like watching videos of like, here's the pitch. And I'm like, I haven't heard a single pitch. And then there's all these Artie update videos, and none of them have an update. It's like, here's Scott the engineer, here's so-and-so, and here's so-and-so with an Artie update. It's like, what's the update? I don't know.
It's kind of my running gag, yes.
But I listen all the time. I have a Sirius radio. They gave me a free subscription, so I listen all the time. And all the Artie years were amazing. I mean, it's like I was more familiar with that than I was the Jackie era, because even when I was in Seattle calling in from 95 to 98, I wasn't listening. I still wasn't listening to the show. I still had never heard the Howard Stern show. And but yeah, when I get out to New York, and then I started listening, and then I became part of the show, and then I go through that whole experience of being in there, and it was crazy.
You don't keep in touch with Artie. No one does, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the Artie update, is that no one has one, except Nick DiPaolo had him. Was that you calling in to Nick DiPaolo's show, or who the hell was that? He had Artie in November, and it was like, is that Artie? I don't think that is.
Artie's doing great. He's actually teaching kickboxing now. No.
I'm a yoga instructor. I do 9 to 5. I do a lot of, downward dog.
I feel like we have to satisfy the clickbait and tell everybody that he's doing great. But yeah, man, we actually did shows right before COVID hit. We did a few shows together, and he's lost a bunch of weight, and he's healthier and happier, and he's doing good. I haven't talked to him in probably. I feel like I want to have an update for you to be able to say, oh, dude, he's yeah, man, he's doing a spin class. He's fucking awesome. But yeah, he's doing good.
Let's just go with he's going.
I haven't had him on the phone for a few months, but he's doing good.
Okay, that's good. So we just want to hear he's doing good. He went just dark. Like, Artie doesn't go dark. He was going to do this podcast, and he was going to read stories, and then gone. I hope he's okay. So the impressions is really what everyone knows you for. I mean, the Sam Kinison thing, I think I could listen to forever. I remember I just watched this. I watch YouTube all day. I mean, I love old stuff. So I saw Bob Costas interviewing Jerry Seinfeld, and Costas says to him, I mean, do people come up to you and just recite jokes to you? And Jerry Seinfeld goes, yes, and I don't understand. Why do they need to hear me tell another joke? And it is like a song. It's like, we want to hear Jerry tell us about the sock in the dryer. Whereas, there's this one sock left. But with the Kinison thing, I think I want to hear you talk about homeless people and, the people in Ethiopia. Can you do that for me?
Did you see that interview that Bob Costas did with Sam Kinison?
I've not. Where's that? Is it on YouTube? I gotta find.
Bob Costas used to have a TV show. It was Johnny Carson, followed by Late Night with David Letterman, followed by Later with Bob Costas. Bob Costas did a 30-minute, so it was probably 22 minutes of actual interview time, interviewing one guest. And he was so good with his research that there's always a moment in every interview where the person who's interviewing will go, how did you know that? Like, he was so good. And I see the commercial and the preview that he has Sam Kinison on tonight. And I watch it, and I'm like, what the fuck is Bob Costas going to know about Sam Kinison? But Bob Costas starts out the interview by saying, Sam, I used to watch you back in Hollywood, back in the early 80s. And back then, your entire act was based on that day's obituaries. And I remember thinking to myself, you know what? This guy's funny, but he's never going to make it. He's too dark. And Sam goes, oh, my God, I forgot it. And he explained the bit. Sam used to go on stage at the Comedy Store with today's obituaries and say, hey, guys, my name's Sam Kinison. I want to thank you guys for coming out. Thanks for supporting stand-up comedy. I'll tell you a couple people that you won't be seeing here tonight. And then he started reading off the list of people who just died, like Esther Goldberg. No, she didn't catch the bus. She's not here. But apparently, if you want to see her work, it's going to be on display this Sunday at Evergreen Mortuary. This is where the dead live. Like, it was just so fucking dark. But yeah, I love hearing Sam's story. But that one always stuck out to me is like, how did Bob Costas know that? I fucking love Bob Costas. love how much he loves stand-up comedy. I'm looking forward to a day where I get to have a conversation with him about stand-up comedy because the guy is obviously an amazing interviewer, knows everything about sports, but has an incredible knowledge about stand-up comedy as well. I love him.
Friend of the show. I have not asked him for an Artie Lange update. I didn't think he'd have one, but I agree because so again, YouTube, there's a guy now just posting all these the Bob Costas shows because I've said I want to see these. I was a kid back then, and I just remember bits and pieces of being able to watch. And he has this really deep thought about how Richard Pryor was, changing comedy. And Jerry's like, what do you mean? And he talked Jerry into believing what he was saying about comedy. And you're right, and that's what you just said is exactly what happened with Jerry Seinfeld, where Jerry's like, I don't know what you're talking, and then he finally got it. So you're right, and maybe I'll hook you guys up. You never know. Bob's a friend of the show. He's gonna have an HBO show soon, so we'll plug that. I don't know why we're plugging that here, but
why not? I love Bob. I just want to plug my future friendship with Bob Costas, which I know will happen, and it's a creepy thing to say, but I'm looking forward to being friends with Bob Costas. I'm looking forward to having a lot of conversations with that guy about stand-up comedy. So the guy is he's amazing. Sorry. You
do a million great impressions, but the Kinnison one, I'm sorry I have to go back to it. So when did you start it? There's a lot to it. There's the laughter, the low, then the screaming, and you've got all three parts. I mean, the Adam Sandler one, there's the same where there's the little part and then the screaming. So everyone has to figure this out. When did you figure out? Because I've never heard anyone. It's like Billy Mira. No one is going to do a David Lee Roth, like Billy Mira. Maybe you do. I don't know. But your Kinnison is just it's legendary. When did you start it? When did you start thinking that this could be something? And was it part of? Is that when stand-up comedy came to your mind? Like, man, if I could do this on stage, I could just sort of do this stuff a little bit.
Voices get stuck in my head. I grew up in a deaf family, so I couldn't learn how to talk for my family. I learned how to talk by copying all the voices I heard on TV. And voices and accents always just get stuck in my head. I have a video that I recorded of Sam hosting a party in LA when I was 18 years old. And I uploaded, I think on my Instagram, a video of me and Sam together when I was 18. And I have really long, I look like I should be in Warrant. And friends of mine would say, dude, I heard you have this crazy video of Sam Kinison. I'd be like, yeah, you want to come over and watch it? And we just watched this video over and over again. It's just 30 minutes of Sam hammered hosting this party. And watching it over and over again, the voice just got stuck in my head. Voice is like, the weirder the voice, the easier it is for me to do it. Normal voices like yours are hard for me to do because I got to find something to grab. And Sam, there's so many it's kind of a slurred speech, and there's that demon laugh, and then of course a primal scream. Ah! I'm sure everyone in this hotel I'm staying at loves.
They're like, he's back. What the fuck? We kicked him out of here 30 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So for the last few years, I've been doing a lot of voiceover work, Family Guy, American Dad, and then random shows will hit me up and say, hey, can you do this voice? And I always just say, just give me a few days. That's what I used to tell Howard all the time. Dude, who do you want on the show? I'll do it. Like, if you just give me a few days. And it always kept coming back to like, well, who can you do? I'm like, hey, I can do anybody. And so we started digging into, and then sometimes it would just be conversation. I would, when I tell a story, I do the person's voice in the story. And I was telling Howard a story about Gene Simmons off the air. And he was like, we got to talk about this on the air. And then it turned into a full-blown character where Gene Simmons would interrupt all the music guests that would come in. And I would try to sell them shitty Kiss products as Gene Simmons. And
I say it's funny, though. Every time you'd have it's Gene Simmons from Kiss. You had to tell people who this was, so they understood.
Well, it started with him because I'm a fan. So I would hear all these stories about how he would, he'd go to rock stations around the country, and they'd say, "Hey, my name's Gus. I'm in promotions." "Hi, Gus. My name is Gene Simmons from Kiss," and it'd be like, I know, like. he knows the power that he has. And I love the sound of that. Like, dude, that first time he came in to confront me on the Howard Stern show, someone gave him my phone number. I was headlining Caroline's for the first time that night, which for a comedian is it's like a big deal. The first time you headline Caroline's. And I still have the message. He left me a message. It was just a short, boop. Hi, Greg, this is Gene Simmons from Kiss. Like, he said that on my answering machine. Like, I'm going to confuse you with Gene Simmons from Pet Boys. Like, and he told me he was coming to my show. He wanted to sit in the front row. And I made fun of Kiss for like 20 minutes. And he sat in the front row and just kept going, you know, that's me he's talking. Isn't that something? Like, he loved it. It was crazy. Everyone who I do an impression of has tried to meet me at some point, and it's always led to like a weird or funny conversation. And but the Gene Simmons thing was like off the charts because, you know, he actually showed up for the confrontation. So
that's pretty funny. I love those impressions. I know I could ask you to do them, but this is, you know, that's your thing. You do that on stage, I'm sure, or you do a little Tracy Morgan maybe, or
you come out to any of these shows. I'm starting off in St. Louis next weekend. And then from there, I'm all over the country in Detroit and Salt Lake and Boise and Nashville. And you see all the dates at getgas.com, get gas with 2 S's. And half the show is impressions, stories about people who I do impressions of, and a lot of the awkward moments that I've had over the years running into people. So it's a fun show.
You have a couple more minutes. I have to ask you about Eddie Van Halen. You did live with him. I just listened to the entire story that you told, I think, on Opie Radio. So people can go watch that there. But condolences if you were still friends with him. I don't know if you still kept in contact with him. Really sad to know that he was dying like that and no one knew about it. Maybe a few people did. But what an amazing story that you lived in his house. But I'm sorry about that, but I did have to ask. You told this story that they kind of glossed over. You moved in as Sammy was coming over to begin the 2004 reunion, and that you said they were documenting it, and then the documentary was going so horribly wrong that they just said, we're just going to just stop and not put this together. What was that like to see? What is the problem? Because this is something that anybody wants to know. Is Eddie the issue? Is Sammy the issue? Is it Alex being an asshole? Tell me a little bit about that time.
That's something I always wanted to know. Whenever Sammy or Michael came over, I was not allowed to be around. So it was communicated to me like, hey, Sammy's coming over today, so you got to go down the hill to the guest house. And I'd be like, all right. I'd go hang out in the guest house, and then I would get a text like, hey, man, coast is clear, and then I'd come back up. But it was when Michael or Sammy came over, I wasn't allowed to be around. And I mean, it's not like, how come I can't, you know, I was like, all right, cool. You know, and I kind of, you start to put together, like, there's some tension there. I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out why. I couldn't understand it. And I know that there were some kids who were, I believe they were in film school at the time, who they hired to do like an embedded. Like they're going to document this whole reunion. So when I was living there, they were making, it was a best of album they were going to put out with 2 new tracks and with Sammy. And these kids were going to film and document this reunion. But from what I understand, what they documented had so much hostility in it that they were like, we can't put this out, you know. But I never knew what that was. And then when they ended up going on tour later that year, I hung out. I think I went to a couple of shows, and man, everything was split. Like there was like 2 camps. I know that early on, like they had 2 tour managers, and early in the tour, somebody said they didn't even want to be on the same plane. So they got 2 separate planes. So there was 2 guys on one plane, 2 guys on another plane flying around. I mean, it was crazy, the tension. But no, I don't know what the source of that was, and that was always like a big question mark. Like, why is there so much tension? I couldn't figure it out. So, yeah.
Did you get a chance to talk to Eddie at all in the last couple of years, or did that kind of fizzle out at the end there?
Last time I called him, I go, again, my phone has I got a lot of phone numbers for people who are famous, and they give me their phone number, and then I feel like I don't want to call them. Last time I called Ed, I go, I just had a random, like sometimes I'll feel like, oh, I'll call him, I can say hello, and I'll have like some espresso or something, and I'll feel like really jacked up, and I go, he picks up, hello? And I go, hey, Ed, what's going on, man? And he goes, who's this? And I go, it's Craig Gass. And he goes, hey, man, what's going on? And I said, nothing, man, I'm just hanging out. What are you doing? And he goes, sitting on the toilet, taking a shit. And I was like, oh, you want me to call you back? And he goes, oh, talk to me. What's going on? And I was like, oh, no, I'll call you. Oh, man, no, you know what? Are you doing okay? And he goes, I'm doing great. What are you doing? And I said, I'll call you later. And I felt really weird. And I was like, I'm not talking to you while you're taking a shit. And then I hung up. That's the last conversation I had with him. I mean, it's like the last conversation I had with George Carlin, who was a mentor, who, flew me to LA. He was so supportive, wanted to help me with my career. The last time I talked to George, I prank called him. And in the middle of the prank call, I broke character and I said, George, it's Craig Gass. And he goes, oh, okay. Hey, listen, I'm at my doctor's office. Can I call you back? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And he was sick. And, yeah. So
you call it inappropriate times. Howard, Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
So let's close with, I saw one of your videos that you have a Facebook page that I think fans can see, and then I think you have a private one, but I'm not sure which one I saw. But you've been posting a lot of memories because people aren't doing shit, so you put the best stuff out there. And I watched, probably it was in July of last year, you posted this video of you at Pearl Jam concert on stage behind Eddie, behind the band set at Wrigley Field. And I watched the whole thing and I thought, God damn it, I missed that. I mean, him doing Bobo O'Reilly, but what the fuck are you doing backstage? It's you guys, you know those guys, I guess, because of the Seattle thing, or how do you know it, the Pearl Jam guys?
Mike is the guitar player of the band, and we've been friends for over 10 years now. He actually appears in my comedy special. I've filmed a comedy special called The Worst Comedy Show Ever. And Mike shows up to show me how much better his life is than mine, which plays effortlessly. And but yeah, we've known each other for over 10 years, and it wasn't even a Seattle thing because we became friends after I moved out. In fact, I became friends with all those Seattle guys after I left. I did a tour with Alice in Chains as their opening act doing stand-up, and that was like in 2000. I moved out of Seattle in 98. I toured with Alice in Chains in 2007, I think. And then in that world, like you just kind of, everybody kind of knows each other. So you get to know everybody through everybody else. But yeah, Mike is an incredibly funny guy and a nice human being who, when I go to shows, he's incredibly gracious to let me stand on stage to witness that experience. So, and I love whenever I'm in situations like that to on any of my social media pages, just describe it in a way that vaguely describes what you're looking at. Like, I remember being at the Super Bowl in San Francisco a few years ago and posting a live video and saying, local San Francisco band rehearsing a song about puppets. And people were chiming in going, what the fuck? Fucking Metallica rehearsal? Like, and I love posting shit like that, in very vague terms and letting people figure it out. There's pictures on my Facebook page you can see from when I was a kid where you can read the comments and people go, who's the Axl Rose looking guy next to you? And it's like, it's funny. But
you have a very Where's Waldo type of life with all this stuff. You like the music thing, the comedy thing, Sex and the City, King of Queens. You have something to say about that?
You say like the Bill Murray moment at the World Series, the living in Andrew's house. Yeah.
Tell me a Bill Murray story. Is it?
It's at the World Series. You just Google my name and Bill Murray at the World Series. I've always said and I know you're a Cardinals fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
sure.
Dude, I just learned about this hatred like the first time I came to St. Louis in the early 2000s. I didn't realize there was so much hostility there for Cubs fans. So forgive me. But
I gotta say this for a second. I think they hate Cardinal fans way more than Cardinal fans hate Cub fans. I'll throw that out there. I think the team that wins the more, and I'm not trying to be a dick about it, but I think the team that wins the most doesn't really think about the team that doesn't win. It's, you know what I mean? Like the Blues, as a hockey fan, we fucking hate the Blackhawks. They won 3 fucking cups in 5 years. We hate them, but couldn't beat them. But as a Cardinal fan, you're like, oh, it's a little cute, cuddly Cubs. And almost, it's like, yeah, let them win one. Fuck, it's been 110 years. So I'll just say that. And I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm serious about it. We hate the Chiefs, you know, because the fucking Chiefs, we don't have a team anymore. But we hated them. So it's always that thing.
Well, like the first time I came to Chicago, I did the Steve Dahl show. Dan Filato was the producer. Dan ended up being Artie's guy years later. And Dan heard me talking about how much I admire and respect Cubs fans because they're so loyal to such a shitty team. And I really admire that. I genuinely respected that. Growing up in New York as a Yankee fan and seeing how mean Yankee fans are to fans of other teams, there's just so much shittiness that you would see at Yankee Stadium that it made me pull out. Even though that was my birthright, I grew up 10 miles from Yankee Stadium. And then I saw Cubs fans, and I went to a game when I was like 17 or 18. And I was like, this place is packed, and this team sucks. I loved it. So Filato tells me, you know, I live with Mark Grace, who was on the team at the time. And he goes, come over, I'll get you some stuff. I go to the house, and he goes, oh, come on, let me get you some Cubs stuff. And we go into Mark's room. Mark's on the road. And he opens up a closet. And he goes, he probably won't miss any of this. And he just started stealing shit out of his closet to give me. Within a year, I go to St. Louis. And again, the Cubs suck at this time. I walked on stage wearing a Mark Grace jersey, and I thought I wasn't going to get out of there alive. It was the craziest fucking thing. Anyways, I've been saying for years, I'll never go to a World Series unless the Chicago Cubs are in the World Series. To which all my friends would always say, then you're never going to a World Series. And they finally made it to the World Series. I got tickets for Games 6 and 7. Ended up down in the third row behind home plate. And right at the bottom of the 10th, when they're about to get the last out, I decided to do a Facebook Live. And I feel somebody leaning on me as I'm trying to hold my camera and get this live shot. I turn around. It's Bill Murray. He's drunk and crying. And I turned around and I'm trying to get this live shot, but in that moment I wanted to go, I love you. Like there's so much you want to say to Bill Murray. And I just looked at him and went, hold on, Bill, just hold on, man, hold on. And I get the shot and I went, ah! And we started high-fiving and hugging each other. And it was this crazy Facebook Live. All the shots of Bill Murray celebrating that Cubs win, he's hugging and high-fiving a guy with a Mariners hat on. And it looks like we went to the game together. But he literally, at the last moment before the Cubs won, showed up right behind me. So, yes, there's a lot of crazy, random moments that happen. Being on the field with my favorite team when they won the Super Bowl, Mitch Hedberg, Eddie, all that shit. It's crazy.
We've wrapped it all up, and I still have so much more to ask you, but I've kept you longer than I even said I would. I'm so sorry about this. GetGas.com is the website to find out where he's going to be. He's going to be in St. Louis this next weekend, May 6th through the 9th, 2021. 2 shows on Friday and Saturday night, so it's going to be fun. One thing I had to ask from my wife was Sarah Jessica Parker. Was she a bitch? What was that like? And then we'll go.
I didn't talk to Sarah much, but she seemed really, really nice. And in fact, Cynthia Nixon was the nicest because I had to go down on her for 18 hours my first day on the set. So Cynthia Nixon was amazing to put up with me. So those girls
must be a great actress.
yeah, exactly.
Craig, I appreciate this. Again, there's so much more. I had so many more things. Maybe we'll do this again. Maybe we'll see you in St. Louis when you come through. But I really enjoyed this. And like I said, I just, all these stories are so great and the impressions are great. So you'll love Craig if you go see him in concert. Anything else that you want to add? Kraken and Mariners, how the Seahawks do? You guys are so far away. Seattle's so far away that I don't even know where it is. It feels like it's Alaska. But.
Yeah, I don't live in Seattle. Everyone thinks I live in Seattle. I live in Los Angeles. I'm in Las Vegas right now because I've been spending a lot of time over the last year and a half with a comedian friend of mine, Carl LeBeau, who just
sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, and that's an incredible story. But just come out to the show, man, because I'm usually funny, and I think you'll get a kick out of the Stern stuff that I talk about on stage.
Excellent. We thank Craig. Had an Artie Lange update too, so that not clickbait. It's true. I ask everybody; they try to give their updates. But we thank Craig Gass for joining us here on Here's the Pitch. STLMasters.com is my sponsor. Masters Restaurants in St. Louis, 5 locations. Head there if you're going out to see Craig Gass. Maybe have dinner before, then go there. STLMasters.com. You can see their menus and directions to the restaurants. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.